Greetings.
Greetings. What's up, Sheik? Hello, Hannah.
Hello.
Nice to see you again, Vishaka.
Hey.
Can you guys see the slides if you hover over the window that says Watch Stream and click it?
Yep.
Cool.
Trying to figure out how to do that. What stream?
Yeah. You see the button? Hello, Alex. Okay, while we're waiting for people to trickle in, we might have a couple more. Why don't we go around and say who we are, what city we're building a neighborhood campus or fractal in, and one or few words about how we're feeling right now. So I'm Tyler. I'm normally building a fractal in New York City, but for the week I'm giving some talks actually on this very class in the Bay Area. Here's the Bay. Beautiful day out here, as it always is. And how am I feeling? I'm feeling a little bit jet lagged, but pretty excited for this particular lab because this lab is kind of about like my role in life, not even just in fractal. And so I finally get to talk to people about it and meet other switchboard operators. Okay, so why don't we do Sheik next, and then Sheik, after you go, call on someone else to go.
All right.
Hey, Scott.
Cool. Hi, Scott. My name is Sheik. I'm calling in from Porto, in Portugal. If you can see outside my window.
Oh, show us the balcony.
See, this is the balcony from my house. I have a garden patch in the back and also some unkempt land and then buildings. But the beach is that way, I promise. Yeah, and I am feeling. I just worked out, so my legs feel like jelly. Yeah.
Leg day. Okay, choose one other person.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's choose Hannah.
Hi everyone. I'm Hannah. I am based in London and I'm feeling quite tired. Yeah, really quite tired today. Didn't have the best sleep last night. Yeah, what was the other thing? Was that it?
I think you got it.
That was it. Okay.
Hannah, I just met a friend out here who knows how to make yogurt that helps you fall asleep and also gives you amazing dreams. So maybe I'll send that recipe your way.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I'd like to hear about that. I will pass to Alex.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm based in Geneva. I'm feeling also a bit tired, but still energized and looking forward to hear more about what this is about. I think I also am quite a switchboard operator in life too. So let's see how I can tap onto that for Fractal Geneva. Anta?
Hi. Oh, sorry, I just had to change my name because I'm accidentally on my partner's profile. But hello. I'm part of the London cohort, but I am currently in Devon, which is like the English countryside. For those familiar with England. Remind me of the question. Sorry, I missed the very first part of this.
Oops. Well, I'll remind her when she gets back. Oh, there she is. Hello, Anda. Okay, well, Anda's getting established. Why don't we have Vishaka?
Hey, I'm Vishaka. I'm at the EA Hotel right now in Blackpool in the UK. There's a lot of EA books behind me. And the beach is a 2-minute walk away, so it's quite nice.
Nice.
Right now I'm feeling quite exhausted, honestly, because I'm going to the EHA tomorrow, and it's been a really tiring week.
And Anda, are you back? Let's see. Yes. Anda, the questions were name, where are you calling in from, and a little bit about how you're feeling right now.
Okay, so Anda, Devon, how am I feeling? I feel really full. I just had a really delicious dinner cooked by my friends.
Nice.
And I'm like happy full.
Hell yeah. Okay, so if you don't see my slides already, find the little window, it's one of the video windows, and click watch stream, and then give me a thumbs up when you have it. Cool. Good. Oh. Vishaka, do you have it? Cool. I wonder what's going on. Anda, hello? Okay, we'll get started. Switchboard Operator Lab is about the art of... Oh, are you talking, Anda? I think you're muted at the moment. I can't hear. You might have to switch your microphone setting. But we can see you. Okay, so first of all, let's cover this term. So the term is a switchboard operator, which my friend Visa came up with. And if you don't follow this guy on Twitter, I highly recommend it. He's pretty much the best Twitter profile out of all of them. I think that's my personal opinion. He's just constantly posting amazing insights. Other terms for this role have been super connector. I've shied away from that term because it feels a little bit strange to tell people like I'm a super connector. It sounds like a little bit full of yourself or something, but it's another good term for it. And then often people in this role often are fixers also. So they're the ones that people go to when there's just some problem. They're like, do you know a guy? And the fixer is the one who knows a guy. In hippie circles, sometimes they're called social alchemists or like social wizards. My favorite term, which I doubt is going to catch on, is this one that the Dutch have called Alimenetje. And it's a term for a networker, organizer, knower of important things, and general doer. And apparently in the Netherlands, these people are often employed by a city or an organization just to like be there, know things, know people, and solve problems. And they're like professional networkers, basically. But we don't have the equivalent of this as far as I know, at least in America. Before I define this, I thought I would talk about it by way of example first. I'll talk about like a peak example from my life where I was doing some real switchboarder maxing. And I don't know if I've ever done it at this level since, but it's a story from when I used to be involved in the effective altruism movement, which I'm still, I would say, adjacent to and really appreciate. And as I've covered previously, effective altruism just started basically as a bunch of nerds in a room. In 2013, there was the first conference, although a bunch of the organizations preceded 2013, but it was pretty small at the beginning. And so as soon as I came into the movement around late 2013, I joined this organization called the Center for Effective Altruism really quickly, and we started the US branch. This is me with my team. And a big part of our goal was how to grow dramatically the movement. And so our initial idea in our project was to create this thing that's now called EA Global, where we wanted to throw conferences all over the world and make them big. And we thought the thing that might take EA to the next level would be we get a fancy venue, we have a bunch of fancy speakers, and then we conjure up a bunch of press. Preceding that, I was trying to find these things, and I was networking in the Bay Area where I am now. And I have this friend, Riva Melissa Tez, who's one of the ultimate switchboard operators. If you're one of these people, a switchboard operator, it really behooves you to know a bunch of others, because what's better than knowing a guy is like knowing guys who know guys. And Riva's one of those guys. And she was friends with this guy, Brian Johnson. Do you guys know him? He's famous for like a lot of longevity stuff now, but back in the day, he ran this company called Braintree, and it had the fame of being like a really big company that sold to PayPal, I think. And then even by the time it got there, like no employee had ever quit. So I was really interested in seeing who this guy was. And so I set up a meeting, and we got along, and I asked if he wanted to do a dinner. And so he said yes, and so then I went to this big mansion in the middle of San Francisco called the Embassy. That's also a co-living house. Has anyone ever stayed there or heard of it? Oh, GCAV? Yeah. It's a really amazing place. Still exists. I'm going to be giving a talk there this week. And they agreed to host this dinner for people to meet with and mingle with Brian Johnson, who had also just started a big philanthropic fund, so I wanted to connect him up to the effective altruism scene. So I thought, like, oh, okay, so this person is a big enough name where I can probably just cold call a bunch of the biggest Bay Area foundations and see if they want to join this dinner. So I use this software called Rocket Reach, which I highly recommend for just finding people's emails. And through that, I was able to find the email or get introductions to the head of Y Combinator's nonprofit arm. Well, GiveWell, I knew I had met Holden Karnofsky previously, and I reached out to him. I reached out to the head of giving at LinkedIn, the head of giving at Google, and like a bunch of other Bay Area foundations. Basically, I wrote them all an email saying, like, this is the guest list, and I included them all on the guest list, which was actually, at the time I wasn't thinking about this, but guest list is ambiguous between, like, who is actually coming versus who are you inviting. And so a couple of them, most of them just came because it turned out they assumed that was who was coming. And then two of them had asked me, like, okay, is this coming or invited? And then by the time I replied to the email, they had all said yes. So I said coming. And they all showed up. And it was crazy. So I had all these, like, leading philanthropists in a mansion. And then one of them at Google was the head of giving at Google. Her name was Zanoon. And I told her, like, we're looking for a venue. Like, would Google possibly volunteer? Like, maybe we could pay some amount. We have donors. And she said, okay, well, I'll give you the Googleplex, like the entire Googleplex, but you really need some high-profile speakers. And so I said, okay, who can I think of who's really high-profile, who's kind of adjacent to the movement? And at that time, Elon Musk had a much better reputation and was interested in artificial intelligence risk, which, if you know EA, that's one of the big cause areas. And so I thought, okay, who could introduce me to Elon Musk? It turns out that he had been heavily influenced by Nick Bostrom, who wrote this book called Superintelligence. Nick Bostrom is an Oxford-based philosopher, or I think he's still Oxford-based at least. And he thinks a lot about AI, which was Elon's big topic of new interest. And so I was like, okay, how can I get Nick Bostrom there? Well, I'll host a sub-conference for, like, the leading figures in AI safety, and then maybe Nick Bostrom will say yes. So we rallied the head of the Machine Intelligent Research Institute, Nate, on the left. And then my team recruited Stuart Russell, who's one of the leading figures in AI in general, on the right. And then Nick Bostrom said yes because they said yes. And then since we had all three of them in this separate little AI safety conference, then Elon Musk said yes. And we put them all on a panel in front of the whole conference. And then, yay, since we had that, then I went back to Zanoon and I was like, we have high-profile speakers. And she gave me the entire Googleplex for free. So that, I would say, peak switchboarding can look like that. And I haven't really gotten back to that level since. I haven't had a reason to. I'm excited to once again soon. But my pride and joy is kind of more just everyday switchboarding. And to give an example of what this looks like, the other day I was in our co-working space called the Fractal Tech Hub. These are not my feet. I think these are Jake's feet. But that's sometimes how I look in there. And every so often, like a random new person will come in. They'll be often like kind of like fresh off the boat. Like they just got to New York. They were looking for a co-working space. And so I met one of these guys. This is not him. I don't want to reveal his identity for a funny reason that you'll see. Let's call him Bob. So like Bob showed up to our co-working space and I got to talking to him and I found out that he was looking for a new job and that also he had just a few months ago broken up with his girlfriend. And so, or his girlfriend, I think, had broken up with him. And so he had moved to New York City to like kind of like start a new life. And so I was like, okay, new job, you say? Well, it turns out right down the hall, there's, he's a full stack developer. And it turns out that right down the hall, there was this startup starting from my friend Jake, who was looking for a full stack developer. So like right away, I just introduced him to Jake. And then they set up a meeting. And it looks like he might end up getting hired at Jake's startup. And then thinking about like that he was looking for a girlfriend, my friend Crystal was also across the room, and I knew she was looking for a boyfriend. And I had the feeling that this guy Bob was her type, and so I was like, Crystal, come here and meet Bob. So now Bob seems to possibly have a new job and maybe a new girlfriend. They've been on a couple dates. I've seen them together. They seem to have really good chemistry. And that's what really your everyday will ideally look like as a switchboarder, and it's like a very pleasing thing to see when it happens. That day was like it was like 1,000 points for me. I felt really good about that day. So now, if I have to give hopefully the examples kind of fleshed out what this concept is, but if I had to say what it is, like definitionally, it's your job to do a couple things. One is to hook people up, and then another thing is to get things going. And so by hook people up, I mean like finding them new jobs, finding them collaborators, finding them housing. If they're a young parent and they need a babysitter, maybe you find them a babysitter or volunteer a bunch of people to babysit, inviting them to events, and finding them love. And actually, a little aside, speaking of finding them love, my friend Daniel, who's one of the co-founders of Fractal University, is looking for a lovely, ambitious man to make his husband. So if you know anyone, let me know. That's Daniel. That's him running. Sometimes we do trash cleanups, and he was running one of those. Another example of this, of hooking people up, is my two friends, Shanti and Gina, had recently quit their terrible jobs. And so I threw them a fun employment party, and I wrote 577 Blessing because we kind of like they had a new apartment, and I wanted to bring people by to housewarm it. But I brought a bunch of people who were like invested in their future, good friends, teachers from Fractal University, other people in the Fractal Network who I thought like had good connections. And then we basically went around in the circle after they had told us about what they're looking for. And then basically people in the circle said anything that they could to help them out, whether it was an introduction to like a lawyer to start a new organization, or a place that they could co-work during the day. We kind of went around and offered things. So that's an example of what it might look like to be hooking people up in your scene. And overall, I would say the job of the switchboarder is to be making introductions that change people's lives. So you're like creating new marriages, you're helping new organizations start, you're getting people new jobs. This is a role that can really profoundly influence the people around you. And then, as I said, the second part of the job is to get things going. And to give examples of that, you could get businesses going. So Fractal Tech was starting this coding boot camp and not getting enough students or co-working members at the beginning. So me and a bunch of other people rounded everyone together, about a room full of maybe like 60 or 70 people. I wish I put the video in. And we invited in like this local like pop-up coffee stand people who made like amazing espressos. And then we basically just divided them into a bunch of different groups, like one person to find new members, one person to find boot camp students for their coding boot camp, another just to tell people about the like the Fractal Tech more broadly and bring in new events that they could host in the space. And partially as a result, Fractal Tech really did get off the ground and has now like over 100 events per month. It's completely full of co-working members, and every boot camp is full. Another thing you might get going are memes or cultural patterns that you think might be healthy for the community. This is a potluck brunch I threw on the topic of taking ourselves seriously after I was going for a walk with one of the community members, and he had a really good rant about how like people were joining Fractal, often like quitting their jobs and going on sabbatical, and then like rediscovering their passions, but not necessarily like getting back into the working world. And so he had a whole rant on like how important it was so that we don't all get priced out of the city to then like turn a bunch of the things that you care about into meaningful work that you can also get paid by. And he gave a really good and well-received rant on that. So that's introducing memes. Funding is another thing you might get going. We just started a Fractal Angel Network where some friends and their parents and friends of friends have access to capital. And so I just brought them all together to start investing in Fractal businesses. And here's a funny story of like, it's not all going to be things that fit into an easy category when you're getting things going. There was this one entrepreneur at the Fractal Tech Hub who I got lunch with him with my friend Andrew, and he was telling us that his dream was always to become a beekeeper. And he was really sad that since he was an entrepreneur, he would have to wait until he was like 70 years old and retired to become a beekeeper. And we were just like, become a beekeeper now. And he's like, what do you mean? And we're like, you can just put bees on the roof of the Fractal Tech Hub. And it kind of blew his mind. And then without even telling us, a week later, we go up to the roof and there's he got a beehive dropped off by this thing called a bee-mobile. And now these bees are just like swirling around New York and like pollinating flowers, and we're harvesting their honey. So this is another example of like a very niche thing where, if you hear someone has this passion, that should be something you like leap on. If it's like, oh, I can't do XYZ, you're like, yes, you can. Here's the hookup. Here's like the funding. Here's the talent. Here's the roof, whatever, here's what the beehive looks like. It's in this weird purple box. I don't really know why. Okay, so if you're in the Switchboard Lab, then you probably have other people who are taking care of the gatherings or the university or the housing network. And none of these discrete projects is your responsibility. I hate the word responsibility, is your area of interest. But the space in between is the domain of the switchboarder. The space in between projects is like the thing that you'll be tracking. Does anybody have, I think there's a really good fictional example that everybody knows of someone who's a switchboarder. Can anybody think of who it is? I have it on the next slide, but I want to see if anyone can guess it first. Come on, you're a nerd. I feel like you would know this one. Think about...
This feels like a pretty large search space.
Okay, think about Middle Earth. Gandalf! That's right. Gandalf is the ultimate fictional switchboarder. So, like, he's, like, going around the land, forging alliances, making sure that messages are delivered between the different parts of Middle Earth. He's catalyzing and partially convening the Council of Elrond, where everyone comes together and they decide to take the ring to Mordor. And he's a talent scout, so he like finds these little hobbits that nobody else believes in, and he's like, these are the guys who are going to save the world. And he was right. But overall, he treats it as his job to kind of just keep track of the entire realm, see what needs doing, see where there's like low community health, basically. And then he swoops in and he like introduces a bunch of people to one another and makes things happen. Likewise, you're going to be tracking the whole realm, and in particular, you're going to be tracking people, including their hopes and dreams, what are their special talents, and then what are they blocked by? So what are they stuck on? What's keeping them from realizing their dreams? What's keeping them from like raising the next fundraising round, from meeting a husband or a wife or other, that kind of thing. So I have like this list basically, and on the list I have anyone who's roughly core to our community, and then maybe even people who are a couple clicks out. And I go through this list with a bunch of my friends every Sunday, and we talk about like, okay, what does this person care about? What are they trying to do in their life? And like, how can we help them do more of it? We also sometimes talk about like, is there a role in the community that this person might be excited by? And through this method, actually, we found people to run this new semester of Fractal University, who had just been like sitting there all along, waiting for us to ask them. And I just called them up, and they're like, okay, let's do it. So for the next 5 minutes, I want you to create one of these lists, and you can have a few categories in here. You can also add some of your own. And the main categories would be like, who do you imagine being your core group in creating your neighborhood campus or your fractal? Who is part of the broader community? This might be people's like sisters or moms who come by, or their college friends who occasionally hang out, or maybe like a teacher for your university. Who is not yet involved, who you would like to see involved. So in my case, I would really actually like to bring in my sister more, but she lives kind of far away. And then what are some places for you to draw from to find some more compatible people for your community? So I'll set a 5-minute timer, and then we'll do a little sprint on these categories to make lists of our own. Does anyone have a question before we start? Okay, I'll set a timer, and then I'll call you all back. Okay, 30 more seconds. All right, let's return. The ducks are calling. I just realized that you can also... Oh, nice. Apparently you can record your own custom sounds for the soundboard. So maybe I'll do one for the next time where it's just me going, return, return. Okay, one last thing I'll say on the people list is to be patient with the people who aren't yet involved, who you really want to get involved. I had a lot of heartbreak at the beginning of working on Fractal because I thought it would be the thing that would bring all my friends together. And so I told like all the people I'm close to across the world about it. And I was like, obviously they'll hear about this amazing thing and they'll want to move here. And that was mostly not true. Like a lot of the people who I really care about, basically it seemed like too much of a new or untested thing. But I will say that now that we're a few years in, a lot of them are moving to New York, or if they're in New York, they're participating a lot more and getting more deeply involved. And so that feels really nice. But I made the mistake of trying to like pressure people in my youthful ignorance. And that generally just doesn't work. You usually just have to work where people are with in their stage of life. Okay. So another thing besides people that you'll be paying a lot of attention to is projects that are happening inside your ecosystem. And so this might look like talent needs that a new organization has. It might look like resources, like maybe an organization needs co-working space or maybe they need funding. And then blocks. So what is keeping these things from getting off the ground? Maybe they're lacking a co-founder. Maybe they have a co-founder that isn't working and you can go in there and mediate these sorts of things. So I keep a list occasionally of things that are happening inside our ecosystem that I have to update usually pretty frequently because a lot goes on here. And this is an example note document of a bunch of things that were all launching in 1 month. And so I couldn't keep all these things in my head, otherwise I would go crazy. So I kept a list of them and then I would just look at the list now and then figure out what they needed. So for the next 3 minutes, since you guys are early stage, probably there's going to be less stuff going on. But let's make a little notes document and give it the title Projects. And it can have 3 categories. There are existing ones that are going on. By default, you guys will have the university, the weekly gathering, and housing. But maybe there's other stuff. Maybe one of your friends is running a startup or a nonprofit. Fill in soon-to-exist projects, so things that are percolating, and then maybe some projects that you'd really like to see. So for example, in my Fractal New York, I would love to see us doing some emergency prep and planning as like a task force, because if another COVID hits, I think it could just like tear these things apart. And you might have your own things that you're excited to see. So let's do that for the next 3 minutes. And go. Return. What kind of file type do you need if you want to upload a custom sound to your Discord soundboard? Return. 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 Did that work? Yeah, sweet. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So that's projects. Another thing you're going to be keeping track of as a switchboarder are venues. So things like size of the venue, what type it is, like is it good for hosting dance classes, or is it more better for lectures or things or parties or whatever. And vibe. So are we talking more of like a cozy living room vibe? Is it more of a professional conference vibe? And here's a little note that I keep on different spaces. These are just the ones that are associated with Fractal NYC, but there are a bunch of others in New York City too that we're friends with, and that's actually lower down. And then I also keep some.
When I see the project slide.
Oh, Sagan? You don't see it?
No, I think you're still at the project slide, at least for me. I don't know about
that's strange.
Others.
Yes, for me too.
Really? Huh. Okay, how about now? Does that make any difference? Okay, let me try restarting the...
You might be sharing the window or the tab.
Yeah, I'll reload it.
Anything else.
Okay, how is this? Anything yet? Yeah?
That's good.
It worked?
Yep. Worked.
Cool. So this is the list of venues I was talking about, venues or spaces. So now let's make our own list. This could be starting with venues that you already have. So this could even just be your living room. You might not have like a third space or anything like that at this point. Then make a list of some potential venues. So early on in Fractal's history, we were really often meeting at this amazing cafe called Cafe Reggio in the West Village that was like full of Renaissance paintings and classical music and like really good cannolis. Actually, the cannolis are mediocre. The chocolate fudge is really good. Mousse, chocolate mousse. So you might have something like this, like a place where everyone could meet on the regular, and it's pretty easy to establish. You just be like, okay, guys, this is our place, and then it's where you invite people for meetings, it's where you invite them for co-working. If the owners are amenable to it, you might invite them for classes there. So potential venues, and then maybe some venues you'd like to see. So for example, one thing I would love to see is a bookstore cafe, and we have a bunch of people who are excited to start this possibly. Another thing actually we already have is this rave cave where there are all these programmable lights in this one apartment called Merlin's Place. So let your imagination run wild for that part. And yeah, we'll do another 3 minutes and make your list of venues and spaces to track. Return. Return. I'm going to have to make a new sound soon to keep that one fresh. Okay, so next, another thing you're going to be tracking are gatherings and parties. And it's an interesting category because I think of these things as being ways to bring all the other things together. So it's where you're combining people, venues, and then often projects and organizations, which can do a bunch of their networking there. Unless it's like a birthday thing, and then you want to probably keep that out. In particular, you're going to be tracking what is happening in the ecosystem and maybe also what's going on in the broader city, because you can always invite people to a dance class or some kind of rave that's happening, who you can invite, and maybe sometimes what the needs of those events are. They might need volunteers, they might need people to greet at the door, that kind of thing. So here's a list I keep of regular events that we have, or regular events that are just happening. So we have regular Fractal U classes, we have a weekly potluck brunch. I also keep a list of other places that kind of generate events or list events. So or have a regular event. So there's a weekly Meta Crisis Salon that a friend of mine runs, and that's often a good place to meet people and invite people. There's also Time Out New York, which is a listings website in lots of different cities. You might have one in your own city. And there might be custom ones in your city too. So one of my favorites in New York City is this one called Nonsense NYC that has like all the strangest events happening every week in the city, from like like puppet shows to clown stuff, to like surreal immersive art. So if you can find one of those in your city, it's often like a nice little secret to invite people to those. And then let's also make a list of events you would really like to see. So, and again, let your imagination run wild here. Two, for instance, really creative and successful events that we ran in Fractal are one where it was a deliberately awkward party, where every single activity was a new thing meant to induce awkwardness. So, for instance, we had the whole room look at everyone else and pair each person with the person that we all thought was least compatible with them, and then and then we had them all like get into pairs to slow dance, and then we put on Slipknot, which is a heavy metal band, for them to slow dance to, and it was very awkward. But people made some surprising connections this way. It often turns out that when you like make the awkwardness explicit, then it loses a bunch of its fangs, and that was the whole idea. I have a friend who's running an event called Nonverbal Speed Dating, which is another example of a creative type of thing that you could do. I threw a 3/10 birthday party one time where it was like a birthday party, except it wasn't my birthday. It was just an excuse to get together all my friends. And so, yeah, let your imagination run wild, and then we'll spend 3 minutes on this section.
Return. Return.
Return. All right. The next thing that a switchboarder is often keeping track of is a kind of different category. It's just the overall community health. So a lot of people in your fractal or your neighborhood campus are going to be focusing on individual projects, and so they're not going to necessarily have the bandwidth to know when things are going off the rails or even especially well. And so I think that falls under the domain of one of these alimenetjes or switchboarders or superconnectors. And I think the overall way to judge community health is just whether it feels like the community is moving from the thing on the left to the thing on the right. So like a kind of loosely connected network to a more densely connected one where everyone knows one another. But specifically, you might be paying attention to any logistical problems that are going on. For example, right now in Fractal NYC, our housing system is a total mess. And every day, basically, I'm getting someone who's asking me, like, can I stay at Fractal next week or next month or something like that? And our system for accommodating them is really crappy. So you might be monitoring things like that. You might be checking on things like different ratios, so old to young. It's nice to have a healthy balance. Men to women, nerds to artists, like all these different categories where you can create a plurality inside a community might be good to keep track of. And then, of course, conflicts. This is just part of the community game. There are going to be conflicts. They're going to be sometimes minor, sometimes major, and often you being at the kind of center of the social graph, being the person who's connected to lots of people, is going to have a good ability to go in and help solve those. And then memes. So are there ideas in your community that are circulating that are positive or negative, or are there new ones that you can bring in? You might notice that like the level of ambition in your community has become like a little bit too low, and now people aren't starting their own projects. You might notice, like I mentioned before, that people aren't like taking their passions seriously and like putting them out there into the world, and so you might try to introduce them. Here's a example list of just top of mind community health things, and they're going to be different for every community. For instance, if you're Vishaka and you're running a more EA themed thing, it might be different than if you're running a thing where there's more like of a dance or family component, let's say. So for the next 3 minutes, let's journal about a few top of the mind signs of community health, and then how you think they're doing right now, and different interventions you might take to make them do a little better. I wrote a funny one under conflicts, which is like, nobody likes Bob. That will often happen. Sometimes there will be a community member where it's just like they're kind of rubbing everyone the wrong way, and often it's effective just to go up and talk to them and like diagnose whatever's going on. Okay, so let's do another 3 minutes, and then I'll call you back. All right, let's circle back. Okay, and then one point I want to make is that as a switchboarder, like magic is a big part of it. People are often going to look at you and be like, how do they do it? But another big part of it is also just building infrastructure. And what I mean by that are specific things like as the switchboarder, you might be the one overseeing the website. Maybe if you're not the one creating it yourself, you're making sure it gets set up. You're going to ideally find a way for people to get involved. That's probably going to be via the website. And you're going to be making sure that there's some kind of group chat. So we find it useful to have two. One group chat for the kind of core people who are doing a lot of the organizing, and then another group chat for the people who are a bigger part of the community. Although right now, at least at Fractal NYC, we have like 7 of these, and it will naturally just become a mess, and that's what will happen as like new social scenes develop and have their own group chats. So we have one Discord for the housing, Fractal housing. We have another one for the tech hub. We have another one for the university, and that's just a part of it. These things get kind of overgrown and messy, but you might start with an initial, for instance, Discord or WhatsApp group. So let's talk about the website. So this is the homepage of Fractal NYC. As you see, it's not like a super professional website, and that's for 2 reasons. I think I might have mentioned these in the last lab. One is that we're kind of deliberately trying to look uncool, and the reason for that is we're not trying to attract people who want it who want to join the thing for status or to be part of something that they can brag about very easily. Mostly we're looking for people who are really interested in forming deep relationships and learning and like building things. But the real reason it's kind of like lo-fi in this way is we found that having a Notion website just makes it really easy to edit. So if I'm sick or away like I am right now in the Bay Area or like really busy, then having a Notion website makes it easy for anyone to just jump in and do their own editing. And so here's the interface and what it looks like. And it's pretty self-explanatory for most people who want to jump in, even if they're not technical. That said, you should go with whatever you think serves your community the best. So here's some examples. On the left, we have Geneva's website, which is beautiful. We have Fractal Seattle's website, which is kind of similarly lo-fi. And then Fractal Boston's website on the right, which is kind of a combination of the two. Like it's clearly well-designed and programmed and a lot of effort put into the UX, but it's not too showy. But sometimes it makes sense to have a splashy website. Sometimes it doesn't. I'll post these in the chat so you can check them out as examples. Here we go. Oh, I didn't realize that Alex was posting. Kudos to ambiguity. Oh yeah, nice. Okay, so that's that. Then you're gonna want to have some way of getting involved, and ideally that has an online component too. So here is what Fractal Geneva has. There's a button where you can just see their event calendar, and then people will just check out the events and presumably come to the ones that attract them. This is what Fractal Boston's interest form looks like. So if you click on it and then you scroll down, it gives you a bunch of different checkboxes for the types of things you might be interested in. And then presumably someone will reach out and then you'll get an email having to do with your specific interest. So if you're interested in like classes, then the university will email you. If you're interested in kid-friendly activities, probably Grin, who's a dad, will send you something. I would add I think these are great categories, and these are all the ones that I would have. I might add to this like a further thing for just crashing on a couch, because one of the biggest sources we have of community members are people who want to move into community, who already live in the city, or people who come in from some other city, and this gives them a way to just preview what it would be like if they can crash on someone's couch, and you have a bunch of people who are willing to take couch surfers. And then for group chat, there are tons of different options. Telegram in the upper left is interesting because you can actually now these days invite people to like a multi-group Telegram that already has all the channels that you would want, from housing to university and so on. But not a lot of people are on Telegram, I find, in America at least, so we don't go with that one. And then it's kind of not that good for spam. WhatsApp is another go-to, at least in New York, that people use. A lot of EA communities use Slack, but sometimes there's a bit of a hurdle to get in. So I don't know if they've gotten rid of that, but that's worth checking out. And then Discord, which we're using now, that's another option. Okay, so ideally, by the end of next class, we'll have a bunch of these things built, because basically the rest of the Fractal can grow on this basis of communications infrastructure. And we can start working on it in like a cowork right now. But if you already have these things built, as some of you do, like Fractal Geneva, let's take the time to work on your people pipeline. So this would be like basically ways of finding community members or activating them. So like events to attend, friends that you have that you might want to invite to crash on a couch, people to get coffee with or in your orbit, maybe speakers to host for a one-day speaking event, and then you can turn them into Fractal U instructors, that kind of thing. And let's co-work on this for 20 minutes, and then we can have a little check-in at the end. And please reach out to me individually if you have any questions about how to get going on this stuff. All right, bon voyage. Hey, I have a friend, maybe you know him, Rich Bartlett, who runs all the stuff on Micro Solidarity. I find it pretty cool. He just created a retreat center in Barcelona, or near Barcelona, and he's struggling a bit to activate it, to get people to come, despite it being super beautiful. I told him I could put him in touch with a few other folks who run retreat centers, like Visa,
Are you free?
I got my class co-working.
Okay.
We're developing the website.
What's it about?
Fractal?
Interesting choice.
We're on Fractal website.
So we're gonna make lunch. And then, what are we gonna do? I think I'm gonna go over to Kelp later, actually.
Where is that?
Oh, that's the house I used to to live in. Morgan, Ryan Lowe. Let's see. When I started living there, do you know Forrest Bennett?
Is that your first?
Yeah. Oh, right, from Luminous, you know. Yeah. So it was me, Morgan, Ryan, Forrest, Vicky, Jan, who, and Diogo, who was working with Ryan at the time at Open It Up. And Vicky and Diogo were super into like alphabet drugs. Yeah, like like no ones you have never heard of. 3-MeO, PCP. Yeah, it's like the new hotness. I never took it because they were always taking it at like 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. They were like, it's time for this. Yeah. But they've all moved out now. Now it's let's see, Brian, Chloe Good, Morgan, Brian Basham, the white version of it. We should meet him. And then Barry, whose name is now Raven, and someone named Susan, who's lovely also. But it's like a real hub in the East Bay. They do events and yeah.
Yeah, so their chat is crazy busy.
Yeah, I know. That's part of the reason I moved out. Honestly, I was like working in an event space and like running an event space. But yeah, it's a house I used to live in for like a really long time. You probably heard me complain about it.
Well, I saw it. I saw it in your video.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'm gonna go over there at like 6 and do some like co-working with Morgan. So I'll be around if you want to swing by there, or
I might be going to 5 days.
yeah.
We'll see. If not, that sounds good. That's when I talked to Atlantis about.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I messaged her.
Oh, good. All right. I gotta call her. I texted her like a month ago that, like right after I found out that David was still married, and she didn't write back or anything. She just called me immediately. And then yesterday I texted her that we broke up, and she didn't write back. She just called me immediately. But I was like, I don't want to talk about it right now.
That's fascinating. What does she do for a living? Is she an heiress or something?
No, I mean she has an interesting background. I don't exactly know, but she dated Dode El Fayed.
Who?
Dode El Fayed, who's married to she dated Omar El Fayed, who's the brother of Dode El Fayed, who was in the car with Princess Diana when they died.
Oh,
Yeah. And she was just always talking about like Omar this, Omar that, and then she at some point was like, well, his brother died in a car crash, and I was like, and so they like bought her a lot of stuff that she then like sold, and I think to some extent like lives on that. Yeah.
Is she some kind of like, are they some kind of Arab
Yeah.
royal family?
It's Harrods.
Arab.
Yeah. It's the department store in the Macy's.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, she was like, she told me a story once where she was really annoyed because she gave a friend a $25,000 dress to sell because this friend was having like a hard time financially, and then like a year later she saw a picture of this friend like on Facebook wearing the dress. Yeah. Yeah. But that's like that garment is worth more than my car.
I'm so fascinated by all the different ways people find to live in New York or the Bay Area.
Yeah.
It's always such a weird, interesting story.
I know.
My friend Mari survives in New York, like only having a hostess job.
Yeah.
She goes to like 3 days a week, and otherwise she just does whatever she wants. And it turns out that she's living for $400 per month in a sex dungeon basement.
Holy shit.
And occasionally she just has to clear out because there's an erotic wrestling session. She has to like go somewhere else. Just leave her home. Crazy?
I really should have lived at Olympic for the first couple of years. I would have gone completely insane, but it would have saved so much money.
I mean, you already were living at like another event.
Exactly. And like really, I once tracked because I was trying to make a whole case for like our utility bill is insane and also I shouldn't have to pay it. And so I tracked how many hours I spent at home and awake, and it was 20 hours a week that I was home and awake.
That's probably about mine, or less, actually.
Yeah. Well, you're in New York though. That's like
Yeah.
normal.
Right.
everyone else was working out of the house.
Right.
Like literally everyone else. I was the only one who had a job outside the house, which is
Fascinating.
yeah.
That's another weird Bay Area.
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I think particularly post COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what to swing back there.
All right, I'm gonna make a sandwich. Are you like good on stuff?
I'm good on stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
The stuff is so good.
All right. Cool. I might make a pot of decaf. You want some? Can I make some?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I'll make some decaf, and I'm
I'll have
gonna
to
make a
leave,
sandwich.
Actually, I'm gonna have to leave at like 1:05.
Okay. Okay. All right. So maybe not then. Maybe I'll just make an AeroPress. All right.
All right.
I'll see you later.
Beware my tripwire.
Return. Return.
Hello, everybody. Please return. Can you all still see the slideshow? Okay, sweet. I thought I'd close out by giving my little vision for this lab in particular. For a long time, I've been thinking about this idea where in the future, in the near future, or kind of already, we're going to have these networked little micro-societies that we're all starting. And then at each one, you're going to have the social wizard person who's like the guy that knows a guy. And my big excitement in the days to come and the years to come is to find out like what happens when you have a big network of people who know everyone. And that they're all in touch with one another so that like someone in Portugal who's looking for a job in the US can find it. Someone in the US who's looking to like hang out in Portugal for a week has a couch to crash on. I really like the idea that in the future there could be kind of like this order of super connectors who are all connected to one another so that like everybody has access to everybody else. And, you know, I don't know what this will result in. I think it will be like organic and emergent. Will it be some kind of like utopic situation? Who knows? But I think overall it's going to be about just us all going forth and serving the realm Gandalf style. So thanks for coming to this first lab. Looking forward to hanging out with you week after week and seeing how things are going. I thought I would end in case does anybody have any questions or things that came up while they were working on the different pieces of communications infrastructure? All right, sweet, smooth sailing. Okay, in that case, I'll see you guys next week. Have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bedtime for you guys.
Teaching.
Thank you.
Good night.
See ya.